Hey, Miss Vaughn. Okay, so I'm doing this in the car. I'm sorry, I don't really have anywhere else to film. So let's hope this one is quicker. So I am doing my observations, my observation video for exceptional children. And I went to Vilonia Primary, Vilonia Elementary, Warren Dupree. I also went to Bald Knob schools as well as the Sunshine School. So the first school I'm going to be talking about is Kindergarten with Miss Davidson. This is at the Vilonia Elementary School. The grow that I'm going to have for Miss Davidson would be that her kindergartners were very uniform. For kindergartners, they were very uniform and they were very well behaved. They did not disrupt her classroom. They didn't just get up and do whatever. There was no crying or throwing fits. Very well behaved. My grow, I felt like she picked on some of her students. There was one time where one of the students, she was a girl, and she was doing this. Ms. Davidson gave them a brain break, and the brain break included them doing some kind of dance move. Well, the girl was doing the dance move, and I noticed that she looked at the girl and said, "Quit, stop what you're doing." When I looked over, the girl was doing the same movement as the other students, so I found that kind of weird. And another thing that I would have to say for her is to not send her students to their seats. She had two students, as you'll see in my little diagram that I made. Those seats were faced towards the wall, and one of them was faced towards a cabinet. So when she sent them to their seats, they were like away from the class altogether, like they were completely away from the class. So I found that kind of different into. My second observation was first grade with Miss Reed. This is at the Vilonia Primary. The Vilonia Elementary could not accommodate us, so went to the primary. Miss Reed was by far the best teacher I have observed this whole time. She was by far the nicest, the sweetest, the most educated. She was amazing. My grow for her, I don't have one. I don't know how to grow for Miss Reed. She was awesome. My glow for her was just how well she knew her students, and she let them do what they needed to. I'm a student that has problems with distraction. I get distracted easy. Like if a pin drops, I'm staring at that pin for 10 minutes and I lose my focus. There were two students in the classroom, and they would occasionally get up and walk around, and they'd go back to their seats and start working again. 15-20 minutes would pass, they'd get up and walk around again, then they'd stop and they'd go back to their seats. And so she kind of would look at them and acknowledge them and go, "Okay, I know what you're doing," but that was it. She wouldn't tell them to sit down. They weren't being disruptive. I'm sure if they were being disruptive, she would say, "Okay, you need to sit down." But they were being very nice, and I felt like she knew that these students needed to have kind of a break, needed to walk around, needed to get the jitters out, and then go back to work. And I loved how she knew this about them, and she accepted it. She didn't say, "Okay, well, we have to sit down." She didn't do that. She said, "You know what? I'm going to look at you. I'm going to acknowledge that you're up." And that way the student knows that she knows that they're up and they're walking around. And if it got out of hand, I'm sure she would have said something. The next classroom I went to was second grade with Miss Reeves. This was at the Vilonia Elementary School. Miss Reeves was awesome. The first thing I noticed about her was how young that she was, and this kind of really put it in perspective for me, and kind of really was like, wow, I could be, this is reality. Just because, she was, I think, 27 years old, and she had been teaching for 5 years. So, it was like, holy cow, like, this is a reality. So that was kind of like, wow. My glow for her, what I loved the most is that she went over they were teaching math. I suck at math. Math is my worst subject, period. Well, when she was going over the math, the students had been going over math and they were using base 10 blocks. So I loved how she provided them something to touch, and I thought that was awesome. Then another thing that I loved about her is when they went over the math, before they started on the math, she said, "Okay, class, what's a couple of different ways to do this math?" And the students, they kind of reviewed. And I'm a student that I need that review. If it's not constantly reviewed, I will not understand it and I won't grasp the topic. So I loved how she reviewed, and she didn't just leave it up to the students to review. She also was in on it. Another thing I'm going to applaud her for, when she did her, and I wrote about this as well, when she was doing when the students came up and she called on a few students and she said, "Okay, I want you to show us how you did it." I loved how she did that, because if they got it wrong or they did it a weird way or they got it mixed up, she would, okay, let's start over and now let's say it. And so there was 5 students, and just for each student to do it a different way. Shows the class 5 different ways to do it. You know, Miss Reeves was helping them do it. I mean, I just loved how she taught and how she let the students do what they needed to do, how she let them do it their own way. They weren't uniform to where they only had one way to solve a problem, and if they didn't solve that problem, that was wrong. There's different ways to solve problems, and she embraced the fact that these students knew those different ways and that it was something different, and so it was okay, and I really applauded her on that. I don't have a grow for her. I don't really have a grow for Miss Reeves. I think she did it good. My next class is 3rd grade with Miss Simpson, and she is at Warren Dupree Elementary in Jacksonville. Miss Simpson was very nice. My grow for her, I guess, would to be a little more organized. I did write about this in my paper on her bookshelf. She hadn't quite gotten around to being able to have the bookshelf. I guess I can kind of move this down. Sorry, Miss Vaughn. Okay, I tried moving it. She hadn't quite had the bookshelf 100% ready yet, so nothing was color-coded yet. And my biggest thing, since I'm an organization freak, it was literally thrown on the shelf. Literally, all kinds of ways. Books were inside out, flipped over. I mean, there was no kind of organization to it at all. So my biggest thing would just try, be a little more organized. But my grow for her, the biggest thing that I was like, oh, I love this. She did, when she was writing their writing prompt on the board, she first spoke it in front of the class. She turned around and wrote it on the board. As she was writing it on the board, she spoke it again. Then when she was done, she turned back around and spoke it again to the class. And I loved it because she gave them 3 different times where she wrote it and she spoke it twice, and she looked at the students in their eyes, and that showed them, okay, Miss Simpson is, expects this from us. And so I loved how she reiterated what she wanted 3 different times and didn't say, okay, here's your prompt on the board, now write. She focused in the class. So props to you, Miss Simpson. My next teacher is 4th grade with Miss Harris, and she says hello, by the way. She was one of your students. This is also at Warren Dupree Elementary. Miss Harris was awesome. The only grow that I would have to say, she did tell me the walls had just been painted, so they couldn't hang anything up on the walls. And she had her behavior chart folded. And I don't know, maybe she would remember, but I know that some of the kids when they would move their behavior down, it wouldn't be 100% down. It would kind of be on the edge. So you wouldn't know if the student was at a 3 or if they were at a 4. Or if they were at a 2 or if they were at a 3. you could tell, but it would kind of be hard. So my biggest thing is to maybe have that displayed a little better, so she could watch the student and go, okay, I know that you just didn't move that, So I think that would have been a little better. That's my only grow. That's it. My glow for her, oh gosh, she was wonderful. I loved, they were reading Legends, and for the Legends, they first went over what the word meant and all that, so the students got a better understanding. And what she did was she had the students read the page. They read a page. And she would take turns. There might have been 2 or 3 students reading a certain page. After they were done, the class as a whole would review the page. They would go over what happened, what do you think is going to happen next, what happened previously, does this tie in with this, context clues. So she really did focus and try to get them, and incorporated on this reading and incorporated on how to figure out what's going to happen next. How does this tie in with the last page? What does this word mean? What do you think it means? And I love that. And she made every student read. She gave the students who wanted to a chance. The students who didn't want to, they even had a chance. And they read it as a class. They read it together. So I love that. My next grade is 5th grade with Miss Roberts Special Resource. This is in Bald Knob Elementary School. Miss Roberts was awesome. She only had 4 students when I was in there, but she was awesome. My grow for her would just be to kind of be a little more disciplinary. There was one particular boy that kept getting ahead of the class, and when he would get ahead of the class when they were doing their fractions on the floor, it would throw everything off, because he would get ahead of the class and he would be completely wrong, just just do a problem that's not even anywhere near close to being correct. And so she would have to stop going over everything, address him and say, that's not right, and I felt like if she would have just said, hey, don't get ahead of the class, next time you get ahead of the class, this is gonna happen. And that, I thought, would have been easier than saying, okay, well, let me stop the class, what you did is wrong, and let me explain why it's wrong, now here's how we get the right answer. I felt like if she would have just said, hey, don't get ahead of the class anymore, stay with the class, even if you think you know the answer, stay with the class. I think that would have been the better approach for me. So that's my only grow. That's the only thing I have to say about that. My glow for her was how she let the students teach the class, kind of, and she didn't have a problem with she had, when I walked in there, they were doing their math minute, and one of the boys was teaching the class. And she didn't have a problem with that. I loved it. I loved how she, that's how she wanted it to be done. And I thought that was awesome. And she let them teach the class, and she let them go over the problems together. They talked about the problems. How's a different way to solve it? And I just thought she did a good job. The next class is 5th grade Gifted and Talented with Miss Goodwin. And Miss Goodwin was awesome. There is no grow at all. There is no grow. She had these kids so excited about learning. I've never seen 5th graders so excited about learning, and they were learning about math. This blows my mind, Miss Vaughn. This is crazy. They were playing a stock game, and they loved the stock game. I was like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me right now? They loved the stock game. They were so excited, and a couple of the boys were like, I'm gonna get this, and I'm gonna buy this, and I'm gonna buy this. And I was like, how in the world are you this excited about this? It blew my mind. They were so excited about it. And then when she said, okay, class, we're going to stop, we're going to work on our countries, every student was like, oh my gosh. And they were so excited about working on their countries. And I was like, I don't know what you did, Miss Goodwin, but you made these students really excited about learning. There was not one student that did not want to learn and didn't have the want to learn, I should say. All of these students wanted to learn, and they were just so happy. So props to you, Miss Goodwin, for doing that. I don't know what you did to those students, but they were pretty happy. My next class is my 6th grade special resource with Miss Ragsdale. Again, I wouldn't have a grow for her. Miss Ragsdale did a pretty awesome job, and she wasn't mean or anything. My glow for her was the fact that she knew all of her students so well. She knew her students who they were with outside of school. She knew their grandparents, she knew their parents, whoever took care of them. She knew that, and she let the kids in the beginning of the class. They had about 5 to 10 minutes, and they shared in front of everybody, and they talked about their new shoes, their new clothes, what they ate last night, what they got the other day. And so they got to talk and really get all of their jitters out, and she just let everyone share. And I thought that was awesome, because she let everyone feel included, as well as acknowledge, oh, I like those new shoes, I like this. So I thought it was an awesome way to start the morning, because it was an 8 o'clock class. You're starting the morning off, and let's go over all the stuff. Let's go over all the cool things you did yesterday, and all the different stuff that you did. Maybe you have something new to share, and I thought that was awesome of her. And then my last class is the Sunshine School with Miss James, and the Sunshine School was very, very different. So for my grow, I'm not going to have any grow for her, because I don't know. I've never specialized in any kind of special education classes, so I don't know how she would do anything different. I don't know how she would approach certain situations, and I don't know how you would make a situation better, so I'm not going to say that she needs a grow. But her glow would be the fact that she knew every student well, and she let every student do what they had to do. There was a boy that had to look at himself in the mirror, and she knew he was going to knock the mirror off, so she set it a certain way, so if he knocked it off, it wouldn't go off the table. She knew that a boy needed to have a spoon. She knew just how much work he was willing to do for that spoon, so she took advantage advantage of that. I mean, she just knew her students really well, and I guess as a teacher, that's something that you have to know. You have to know your students very well, no matter what. But just the fact that she knew them so well, and she was so in tune with what they were gonna do, when they were gonna do it, and why. So she, I remember asking her a couple questions. Why do you do this? Why do you do that? And she was very happy, and she said, some of them, they know exactly how to push your buttons. Even though they may not be verbal, they know exactly how to push your buttons. So it was a very eye-opening experience, and it was very good. So props to Miss James, because she kept all of the students happy, and they, none of them had any outbreaks. There was a couple of outbreaks, but they weren't anything major from what she was telling me. She said this is normal. But that is all of my exceptional children 9-hour observations. So thank you, Miss Vaughn.